welcome.
Hello.
Everybody pops in. Love it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And I always love the galaxy shots like Kim has behind her. Those always make me smile. I'm like, yes, we got a whole universe here. Kim, where are you from?
I'm in Florida.
All right, splendid. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good, everybody. Everybody looks so good. We just want to see people. I was like, yes, there are other people. Like Carmen, you know what I'm talking about, Carmen, don't you? Absolutely. Vanessa, good morning. Excellent. Mary, I always feel like I'm going to date myself here, but like romper room. Anybody knows what that is?
Sadly, yes.
Well, it's...
Yeah, me too.
Oh,
Me too, Ginger. I
yes.
share that memory.
Hollywood Squares. That one. Anybody know? Remember Hollywood Squares?
Yep.
Yeah. Regina, yeah, that was a good one. For anybody who knows Hollywood Squares, which square would you want to have been in?
Paul Lynde Square. I loved Paul
Yep.
Lynde back in the day.
He was awesome.
Was. Yeah. His laugh. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yes. Yeah. Always fun. We could do that. Hollywood Squares for association. Map dynamics. Ooh, doo, doo. Looks like a tic-tac-toe table for anybody who's unfamiliar with Hollywood Squares. I'm sure there's a YouTube on it.
I'm sure they'll bring it back like they brought everything else back. They just brought back Name That Tune. So that was,
Did they really?
yeah.
I really would like leg warmers to die though.
That one went over my head, I think.
Retro. Austin, you've got the Tom Cruise shades there, so you know those just keep coming back. Let's see them, Wayfarers,
Yeah.
baby.
What's the
Look at, yep, and there's
Top Gun.
Maverick.
Wait.
Let's see him. There's another Maverick.
All right, we've got some cool shades. All right. Well, I will get us started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third Map Dynamics Coffee and Connection series on rocking virtual events. There's a reason for the shades, I promise. So I'm your host, Alexis Simino, and I am so glad to have everyone here with us today. And I'm thrilled to have two very special guests. We have connection facilitator Ginger Johnson, and of course our headliner and sponsorship expert Bruce Rosenthal. But before I hand over the mic to Bruce for our Q&A, I'm going to invite Ginger to kind of get us started with a little mic check and some practices for good connection. It's all you, Ginger.
All right, everybody. We got the energy here, MapD, and all you coming at us. We realize that this is an hour of your life you're never going to get back. We're going to make sure it's worth it. It's really important that you feel the same way, and our energy is all for you coming through the wire. So turn your cameras on as much as possible. We totally get it. If your preference is not to, if you turn on your jammies, we love seeing jammies though. It's totally up to you. We're glad you're here, whatever you choose to do. Because as a connector, I know that the more we physically show ourselves, the more we feel like we're in the room together. So again, it's your choice. Just know that everybody thinks you look damn wonderful. Use the chat, burn it up. In fact, right now, to the chat. I always feel like it's a bat signal. Go to the chat. I'll do this with you. And if you are good, here's the question du jour to warm up the chat. If you were to invite one musician over to your house for dinner, who would you invite? One musician, alive or previously alive, to the chat. Let's see what you got. Who would you invite? Ooh, look at these. I love this. Okay, yeah, keep going. Ooh, Lady Gaga. You think she'd wear that meat suit? Yeah, they would keep going. Look at this. This is great. Awesome. Keep them going. Who would you invite over to your house for dinner? Love this. Ooh, Sun Shinedown. Haven't heard of them. Yes, awesome. And once you've put your musician that you're having over for dinner, because everything is possible, go ahead and put where you're calling from or where you're coming in from today and your company if you like, because the chat is really the side conversations. It's when we're in the room, it's when we're in the hallway, It's after the breakout room. It's on the way out the door. So the chat really needs to serve that function. So please really, really use it a lot. Austin from Map D is going to be paying attention to that too. Call him Maverick if you like. And he's going to answer or help with any questions that might come up as well. So we're all here for you today. Bruce, who would you invite over for dinner, by the way?
Does it have to be one person?
No, it's your party.
Oh, it can be a group. I'd invite the Beatles.
Of course.
We have a big dinner. If we're gonna do dinners now in person, we might as well have like 4 people.
Excellent. They'll come over in their yellow submarine, right?
Yes.
Very good. All right. And let's see, making sure you want to do the photo op, Alexis? You wanna
Yes.
do that?
Photo op time, my favorite part.
Yes, you all look great. Alexis is going to take a photo. If you are willing, we would love to see your smile. Hold up your mug of whatever. We're not going to ask what's in it. That's totally up to you. Time zones be damned. Hold up your hands. Oh yeah, right on, Abigail. I love it. And
All right, we've got 2 rounds this go round. So 1, 2, cheese. And yes, that cheese is intentional. And we're going to do 1 more. And 1, 2, cheese. All right, thank you. That will be going on LinkedIn, so please keep an eye out for that and tag yourself.
yes,
See
so
all the other awesome people who are in the call today.
yes, and so Bruce is going to give us fantastic insights, and I'm going to be back at the end to kind of recap some of what he shared, how to use what he's saying. I mean, he's going to give you lots, and then as a human connection expert, I'm going to give a few more. Also based on some of the questions y'all submitted, so thank you for those of you who did that. Any question is welcome at every time today. Use it, put it in the chat. And then I'd like you to stick around. And so I'm going to give you the starter to a joke, then I'm going to give you the punchline for at the end.
Nice.
I learned this from a reporter friend of mine. People wouldn't call back, so she started the joke and they had to call her back. So the joke is, how do you measure a snake? And so with that, Alexis, back to you.
All right, I will be thinking about how to measure a snake. But before then, I do thank you, Ginger. That was wonderful. And I would like to introduce Bruce. So Bruce and I met through the Partnership Professionals Network, PPN. I've seen him speak. PPN is definitely a great group for you all to keep an eye out for. They talk about sponsorships and is a great community. And Bruce is a wealth of knowledge on this topic of sponsorship and corporate partnerships. He has more than 20 years of experience, not just practicing, but educating associations and nonprofits. And I do encourage you, after the call today, reach out to him, chat, talk about your ideas, but definitely follow him on LinkedIn. He speaks often and posts about where he's presenting, and you can kind of follow him there. So thank you for being here with us, Bruce, today.
Thanks, Alexis. Good to be here.
Let's set the stage here. I know pretty much most of the folks that will be here are from associations, but I'd love for you to define sponsorship for us. How is it different from trade show exhibitors or a supplier membership?
Sure. Well, sponsorships are really, I think, unique and ideally customized relationships with a very small group of companies. So I used to work for an association. We had probably 800 business firm members, 600 exhibitors, at one time, many, many dozens of conference sponsors. But the true relationships that really brought in the most revenue and the most member value in that relatively large association were only 20 companies. So to really customize and to provide the true value, both for the companies and the associations, it's a small number of folks. Those companies are spending their marketing dollars. This is not philanthropy. There might be a little bit of social accountability in there, but it's mostly companies making business decisions. They have an ROI. They have choices on where they spend their marketing dollars. I have found in interviewing a lot of corporate partners for clients, those companies would prefer the relationships with associations because of the power of affinity. But if they can get a better ROI with their own endeavors, I am finding more and more that the companies are pulling back on associations, either cutting back the level of their sponsorship or dropping it altogether.
See, and do you have any comments about what sponsorship is not?
It is not, as one company said to me, well, actually, a number of companies have said it in different ways. When the company said that we are not a checkbook, we are not an ATM. We're looking for a relationship. So associations and unfortunately there are folks on association staffs and boards that say, oh, well, that we want the money, but we really don't want to sit down and engage with them. So it is not a exchange of cash for logo placements. And when I've looked at a lot of association prospectuses, in fact, I did an exercise with a Partnership Professionals Network group a couple years ago where I said, take your prospectus, which is probably gold, silver, bronze. I've seen as many as 7 categories. I didn't know there were that many heavy metals. In fact, I think they had a double gold because they ran out of categories or they had styrofoam or something in there. But I said, go through your prospectus with a red pen and scratch out anything that says logo visibility recognition and see what's left. And in many cases, it was like they took out all the logo visibility recognition and the shout out from the podium. And the only thing left was the 45-minute meeting with the board of directors. And it's like, so you're really going to charge a $20,000 sponsorship for a 45-minute meeting? And then it began to resonate. Oh, that's why it doesn't make sense to companies, because the logo visibility is not of top value for many companies. If they are rebranding, if they really need to get information out about a new company, the logo visibility can be good. But there was a company that told me years ago when I worked at an association, we were talking about all the logo placements and the banner ads, and the company CEO or marketing VP company off, he said, Bruce, we've been sponsors for 20 years. Everybody knows who we are. We don't need the logo visibility. And on top of that, we really don't need our logo on that sign in the convention center lobby or on the website with 12 other logos.
All right. So talking about when they don't just need logo visibility, what are they looking for? Especially those sponsors who have been a part of the association for so long.
This is one thing that the good news is this is very consistent, and it has been for years. And this is something I learned when I had launched a sponsorship program for a large national association with great fanfare, a great new program. Unfortunately, we launched it in the fall of 2008, just as the economy crashed, which we thought was the worst thing that could happen to an association and a sponsorship program until we got to the pandemic. But I realized in 2009, we had 20 companies paying top dollar in our space, and we knew they were going to get very little new business in the coming 2 years. So we needed to make some changes. So I brought in a consultant and I said, would you do confidential one-on-one interviews with the top 20 companies and bring your findings back to us? And so the consultant comes back a month later after doing all these interviews, and I'm sitting in a meeting next to the CEO, the COO, the VP of conferences, the VP of marketing, and the consultant says, all of your sponsors said the same thing. They are unanimous. And I was like, great. She said, however, the big however was, all 20 of them view the sponsorship program completely differently than you as an association staff view the program. So even though we had a good and new program, it was pretty much by venue. It was what they got at the sponsors got at the conference, what they got on the website, what they got in the e-newsletters. None of the companies viewed it that way. She said what they all said, almost word for word, 3 big value propositions. Business development opportunities, of course, some sort of branding uniqueness, branding differentiation. How does that sponsor, who is a marketing firm, differentiate from the 30 other companies in the exhibit hall who are marketing firms who are not sponsors? And the third was around knowledge leadership. They truly wanted to be known for the expertise, not the product or service that they offered, but they truly wanted to be known for the expertise, the problem-solving ability that they could offer members. So business development, branding, and expertise. And the 3 of those are closely intertwined, because if a company is positioned well for its knowledge, that becomes its brand, and that can lead to sales. So when you put the 3 of those together, now the differentiation comes up. Each company has somewhat different goals and different knowledge bases and all that. But I have found you can't go wrong in assuming that most sponsors are going to want business leads, some sort of branding or branding differentiation, and to be positioned as a thought leader.
Across the research and consulting that you've done with different clients, are you seeing much variability outside of that, or is there anything else to add to the list that sponsors are looking for?
Everything pretty much fits into those three buckets in some way, shape, or form. And it may be some more one than the other, but it still always comes back. Companies, I mean, unless it's very much a social accountability project where they just want to be featured and known for doing the right thing, but there aren't too many companies like that that are top level sponsors. Or that are interested in philanthropy. It is more it's still a business decision. It's marketing dollars. So if they have a decision to make, are they going to do an ad campaign, or are they going to beef up their website? Are they going to do something else in sales? How will the ROI, the increased sales on those endeavors compared to being a sponsor?
Great. Well, I do want to encourage those attending today to throw in any questions for Bruce in the chat. I'm going to ask one that I did see come in through the registration, which is, all right, cool. So we have an idea of these three things that sponsors want. How do we translate, or what does that look like when in-person events are going virtual and we don't know when we're going to be able to meet in person in mass again? What are some of the tips that you're advising your clients on, or that you're seeing?
Well, I think the first thing to remember is that I find, and this goes back to 5, 8, 10 years ago when I worked with a large association and directly with our sponsors, a lot of those top level sponsors were not all that excited about in-person events 5, 8, 10 years ago. Three reasons. They had trouble finding their target audience. And again, I worked with an association that had 9,000 people at the conference, 500 exhibit booths, a lot of sponsors, obviously big convention centers. They had trouble finding their target audience. The benefits in many cases focus primarily on logo visibility, signage, shout out from the podium, types of things that didn't really matter a lot to companies, and very time consuming for companies and very expensive. So if it was a big convention, it could be, in some cases, tens of thousands of dollars to ship a large exhibit booth. I had sponsors that were sending as many as 50 executives to the annual conference.
Oh, wow.
For 4 days. And they had, and a lot of their meetings were one-on-one with folks. A lot of the business that they did were breakfast meetings, dinner meetings, going out for drinks afterwards, not the core of the conference. So to some extent, companies have been not all that excited about in-person. And unfortunately, I think what happened last spring, summer, and fall, when associations began to cancel the in-person conferences and switch those to virtual, and in some cases, and it was a challenge because we didn't have a roadmap for how to make that shift, a lot of associations refunded the money to sponsors or just said, we'll roll your sponsor fee into next year. I'm sure we'll be back in person next year. And especially associations that refunded money, I'm afraid there were some of those companies that said, here's our ticket out of here. We're not the bad guy as the company. Here's our excuse to just say, okay, they're going to refund the money and get in touch with us later once they figure this out. We'll just use that as our ticket out of here. The associations that did find sponsorship opportunities for their virtual conferences, unfortunately, in some cases, it was the same benefits. It was the logo visibility. It was the kind of the canned commercial video between events or whatever. So I think company and no way of really, associations didn't implement any way to really target members who were attending sessions, virtual sessions. So companies were telling me they had the same challenges with virtual that they had in person. They couldn't find their target audience. The benefits were mostly around logo visibility and kind of canned ads, or an ad on the conference promo email or whatever. And it was very time consuming for companies for what they got out of it. So whether it was a conference that was 2 days for 10 hours a day or spread out over 4 days, either way, it was a company exec that was spending time trying to navigate an online system and being told, oh, well, you really can't connect with members at all. So I think when we began to pivot, we're really not, I don't think we're in any worse shape than we were a year ago before we canceled in-person conferences. We're still in a situation we need to find ways to offer more value to companies.
So do you have, when developing those sponsorship prospectuses, do you have a general recommendation on how to package them and how to talk about those benefits that are included?
For top level sponsors, I would say don't use a prospectus, because that automatically, I think it commoditizes what you have to offer and it loses any customization.
Okay.
Those of you who have heard some of my presentations may recall that the analogy that I often use for a good, robust sponsorship program designed to achieve ROI, it's like the relationship that a company has with a marketing agency. And if a company is launching a new product and goes to a marketing agency and says, can you help us get the word out on this new product? The marketing agency wouldn't say we have gold, silver, bronze. And the marketing agency wouldn't say, oh yeah, I think you need to run 3 ads and do something on your homepage and do this other thing. Most marketing agencies would say, could you come in and talk with us, or can we set up an hour and a half meeting? And we, the agency, will ask you numerous questions about your new product, the competition, who your target audience is. And at the end of that meeting, most good agencies would say, thanks for the information. We're going to think about this and we're going to call you back next week. And we're going to come up with something customized based on your product, your price point, your audience, the competition, all of those factors. And that has much higher value than the standard gold, silver, bronze. And that's why marketing agencies don't offer predetermined packages. So again, this is not for all sponsors. And it also can be scaled. And most audiences like this one, there are a range of association sizes. If you're doing this, if you're a small association, you can do this with 2 companies. If you're a larger association, it can be 10 or 15 companies. It can definitely be scaled. But having a conversation with companies to really sit down, ask them what their business goals are, what their marketing goals are, what their ROI is. I had one company that didn't want to share the ROI, and I said, what if I sign an NDA, non-disclosure? I won't tell anybody what the ROI is. They said, okay, that would be useful. I found out their ROI, it was a big company, was 2 contracts during the year. So the idea of blasting emails and banner ads and signage and all that for a company that needed 2 contracts a year. Now that still means, gee, they maybe need 30 introductions. It would narrow down to 10 meetings, it would narrow down to 5 proposals, it would narrow down to 2 contracts. That's a business model, a marketing agency type business model that is of great interest to companies.
I love that. I took some good notes on that one, Bruce. So I want to comment on something that came in from the chat. Regina Roebuck, Wave, one of my awesome customers.
Hi, Regina.
She says that, don't you think that in today's market, sponsorships are no longer a given, but a luxury item? And it's more important to build those relationships and make sure the sponsors are really getting a personal touch.
So I don't know if you mean Regina luxury for the association or for the company. Regina, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, just for the company. I think, it used to be where you could call on a sponsor and they would go, absolutely, we can give you $1,500, $2,000. And now it's, especially in the hospitality industry, which is one of my clients, now more than ever, it's, do we pay our employees and keep the lights on, or do we buy a boat kind of deal? So that's how I kind of equate it in today's world with the pandemic and trying to get partners, is that it's not just a call and say, hey, give us money. It's a building that relationship and really giving them an opportunity to figure out what they really need and what their ROIs are in order to invest that money. It's not as easy as an ask anymore.
Correct. Well, and there are definitely industries under great stress. So yeah, it's going to be hard to get money from convention and visitors bureaus, hotels, airlines. So groups like ASAE, state associations are hard pressed when much of their sponsorship revenue came from those sectors. For other companies, I think part of the challenge that we have, the sponsorship model that we've been using is decades old.
Mm-hmm.
And companies think that's all it is. It's gold, silver, bronze, logo placements, visibility, and recognition. So I've talked to companies that have said, oh, we don't sponsor anymore, because they think that's what it is. And our challenge is how to go to those companies and say, and that's why I say don't use a prospectus, because that immediately puts it into that commodity category of cookie cutter, everybody gets the same thing. But to go to companies, and sometimes it's a challenge. And I've had companies over the years that have said, oh, just tell me what you're offering. I'll let you know how much I have to pay. And I've said, well, can I just give me 10 minutes? Let me start asking you a couple questions about your business goals, your marketing strategies. And that becomes a differentiator. And I was having that conversation with a sponsor a number of years ago, and he cut me off 10 minutes into the conversation and said, "Can I just mention something?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "We sponsor dozens of national and state associations, upwards of $100,000 sponsorships or more, dozens of associations. Nobody's ever asked us what our marketing goals are."
Mm.
They said, "Here's the prospectus. Check off the box, put your credit card here, and send it to sponsorships@xyzassociation.org." Not even a phone number or a conversation. So you're right, Regina. If that's what a company thinks a sponsorship is, they're probably just going to say, "Here's something we can just take off the expenditure list. This is discretionary. This is a luxury." What's also interesting to that question is that companies I have found will spend much more with a marketing agency than they will with an association sponsorship.
Mm.
And I had a sponsor years ago when I worked at an association that had their marketing agency call me at the association to ask for demographic information about our members. So the marketing agency could put together a marketing campaign for our sponsor. And I'm thinking, and this is after the sponsor had dropped down a category because they said they didn't have a lot of money for sponsorships, but they were spending 2 or 3 times as much as they were spending on the sponsorship with that agency. So we as associations need to position ourselves as having marketing solutions for companies, and to have solutions, you need to understand what their marketing goals are and what their marketing challenges are.
Love that. Just kind of echoing in some of the comments from the chat. So Scott says that the prospectus can still be a great starting point for conversations with large sponsors, because like Bruce mentioned, sometimes they're like, "Well, tell me what you got and I'll pay for it." So, even I think that even for the sponsors that don't necessarily talk about their ROI, they're still looking for it, even if they don't know how to describe it. So I love that example of kind of probing them and asking for their time to figure out what that is.
Yep, and Scott's right. And we all work with a lot of companies, and there could be startup companies with a lot of money. So if a company just says, "I got $5,000, that's all I can spend. Can I sponsor the name badge lanyards?" Even if I think that's not going to give you the highest ROI, if that's really what they want to do, that is fine. And Scott's right, there should be a prospectus for those companies. But as we can move companies or build that relationship with an executive to move them into the conversation, we may find more, or they may still say, "Nope, we got a X dollar cap on sponsorships, that's all we can spend." But some of them might say, "Wow, we need those 2 contracts this year. And it sounds like, wow, you're talking about positioning us as a thought leader with some webinars and maybe doing some focus groups where we can get one-on-one or in small groups with some of our prospective clients." That could lead to those 2 contracts. So if you're the solution, they're not giving away money, but if their ROI is to achieve a certain goal and you can help them achieve that goal, then you're a solution, not only for the company, but for that individual you're talking to. He or she can then go to their boss and say, "Oh, we succeeded. This was a good investment."
And I think that, this is Coffee and Connections, and we're talking about connecting. And that's it's not necessarily something you can put on a prospectus, but it's something that you can deliver for your sponsors, is being that connector, saying, "Oh, you really want to connect with our young professionals? Let me make sure that you not only have that presence with the young professionals, but I'm going to introduce you to a few from those big firms," and things like that, and getting them kind of connected. I love that. So I'm looking for a few other questions. Does anyone want to chime in with a question for Bruce, Austin?
Yeah, we've had some good questions come in the chat. Anne was asking if we can discuss the difference between sponsor and exhibitor, and Shelley had something along the same lines, and Regina had a great comment about calling sponsors partners and kind of making some distinction between the levels of support and what people get out of this when they participate in events. And
yeah, I think the difference between sponsors and exhibitors is, and again, we associations work with a lot of different customers. And using another one of my analogies, which is a food and restaurant analogy, which is harder during the pandemic, but it's almost like a high-end restaurant that offers catering on the side. So anybody that comes in the door is a customer, but some people are going to sit down and order off the menu, the prospectus, so to speak. And somebody else might want to talk to the restaurant's catering manager for an hour to answer all those questions. What are the goals of the event you want to have? You know, are there any special dietary restrictions of your attendees? Oh, can we package entertainment or flowers along with the food? So same restaurant, but kind of off the menu or the catering service. And I think as associations, we can definitely offer the prospectus to folks who want to kind of order off the menu and pick the gold, silver, bronze, or add some banner ads or whatever. But then there are going to be some folks who are going to have more money to spend and kind of a higher ROI. And it's worthwhile to have that conversation with those companies to find out exactly what their needs are and to customize something that'll be unique to their company.
I do want to mention also something that I saw, and if I know many of you have met Terry Cardin, but she mentioned that on her sponsorship packages, she always has a what else column or what else category, and I've seen that from some of her events, and I think that's a great way to also kind of keep that conversation open with someone who might be newer to your event. I did get a question from the chat, Bruce, and that is if there was a general, or if someone was putting together a survey for their sponsors, with one being, what are your marketing goals? Are there any other questions that you'd like to add to that survey?
Sure, I think it's fine to do a survey. I think for the top level folks, so survey maybe if you had 30, 40 folks or folks that have been sponsors of different levels at the conferences, email survey or online survey could be fine. For those top level companies where you're seeking 20, 50, 100, maybe even more than $100,000, I think that's more of a conversation. So in either case, it's around, you know, what are your marketing goals? Where else are you marketing? What sort of marketing endeavors are working for you? Which ones are not? How would you define success in a marketing campaign? If it's a conversation, you could ask them more specifically, how would you define success in sponsoring our association? Are you sponsoring other associations in this space, in this trade or profession? And I think also still with the pandemic, is your company offering any particular solutions to our members during the pandemic? And that could be different sorts of companies, which gets into another question that we haven't talked about of prospecting. And are there companies that we never would have thought about as sponsors of our associations that, because of the new challenges the members have, and whether that's opening offices or partitions in offices or cleaning offices, buses, rental cars, whatever, is this an opportunity to reach out to companies based on the needs of members? So all sponsorship programs need to be based on the association's mission, the needs of its members, but finding out what members need and then contacting companies one-on-one. So I know the question was about a survey, but I think there are more targeted opportunities to talk to companies and say, gee, you know, we did a member survey and our members' top concerns now because of the pandemic are these two things, and your company happens to have a solution to one of them.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, first of all, that makes it a lot easier to make that cold call or send that cold email. It's not like, oh, we're releasing our new prospectus, but it's like, our members need this. I noticed on your company's website, you have a new product or service around this. Can we talk? And I find that those calls and emails get returned, and then it becomes a discussion around, again, the ROI, the company's goals, the company's marketing goals, marketing strategies. And I think the other reason to ask those questions, and whether it starts with an online survey and then segues into or maybe use the survey as a way then to pinpoint the smaller number of companies you want to have the one-on-one conversation, just to ask questions and follow-up questions. And ideally, if you can do this with two folks on staff, so somebody or staff and a board member, so someone can take notes, someone can ask questions, but not to offer any solutions at that point. And that's for two reasons. First of all, you might offer something, you know, they start talking about a new product and you jump up and say, wow, we got this really great online expo. You can be part of that. And the company says, yeah, we don't really do online expos. So that's kind of the end of that conversation. And the other, it's really useful to, I mean, sponsorship initiative should be an overarching goal for associations. It should involve all department heads. And it's really useful after gleaning all that information, either in a written survey or an interview discussion with a company, to then take that information back and to call the association's marketing director or social media director or education director and say, yeah, just talk to a company. Here's what they're thinking about. How would that fit into our program? How would this help our members?
Love that. We got a few questions on this one in the chat, Bruce, and Scott was our presenter last chat and talked about exhibitors. So how would you define the difference between exhibitors, sponsors, and partners? What are the lines in between there?
Well, the terms sponsor and partner are often used interchangeably. The sponsor, the dictionary definition of sponsor is really about logo recognition. So it's really about, you go in, when we used to go into the symphony hall and you see the big plaque on the wall, and here are the sponsors. They paid, they get their name on the plaque on the wall. Partners is more of a collaborative relationship. There are some associations that are hesitant to use the word partner, either because of their bylaws, because of guidance from their lawyer that says, gee, we're not really partners. Or I used to work with one association that had state partners. They couldn't use the partner with other entities like companies. So partner sponsor are used interchangeably. And an exhibitor tends to be more of the folks that that buy the exhibit booth, but also as Scott Oser has pointed out, that there can be an exhibitor that gets, especially in the in-person environment, a large exhibit booth and maybe sponsors a reception also, that ends up spending more money than a year-long sponsor would, or a conference sponsor. So I think to Scott's point, it's as important to look at the dollars as it is to look at what we're calling them, because an exhibitor with some add-ons at an event can be a significant amount of revenue.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I'm hearing as you're describing these survey questions and things like this is, I think that sales can be a dirty word in some worlds, but what you're describing, Bruce, is a sales call. The process of selling sponsorship is a sales process, and something that I have an association background, and something that I've really valued about being on the supplier side of things, understanding like the buying and selling environment. And it's not supposed to be dirty. You're delivering what people want, and that's kind of what Bruce is getting to, and I love that. And to me, it was kind of like an epiphany to make that connection. So when you're looking into not just sponsorship, but I would recommend subscribing to some sales blogs and figuring out how to have discovery calls and understand and peeling apart pain points. So wanted to share that.
So let me, actually, a couple other points, Alexis, that may fit in. So we haven't talked a lot specifically about virtual conferences. And now that we realize we're going to be virtual for all or part of this year and maybe beyond, or some virtual component. And now that we're better at working with virtual platforms, the platforms are getting better. I think there are three things that sponsors are looking for that can be a real plus at virtual conferences, other than the logo placements that they don't value a lot. One of the key aspects of virtual, which is a huge advantage over in-person, we can track anything. We know who's logging in, what sessions they're logging into, what documents they're downloading, and what chats they're participating in. And in the in-person environment, we knew very little of that. We tried to track people who were coming in and out of the room, and if they didn't need education credits and they weren't checking in or whatever, we didn't know. And it was just a lot of clutter and a lot of people in many cases. So we can track anything. So if a sponsor says, gee, we'd really like to know who's attending these 2 online sessions, because that topic is of interest to our company. And if you could actually even overlay that with your member database, because we'd like to know people who attended these 2 sessions, who have the title of CFO in their companies, and they're in the New England region where our company is, that would be a great list to have. Now, we won't get into the discussion of member privacy and how you're going to do that. That list of, say, 40 people would be of much greater value to that sponsor than the list of the 400 or the 4,000 who attend the full conference. And this is what Amazon and others have been doing online for years, and companies are beginning to do on their own. So we as associations have the opportunity with online conferences to provide them with that information. We can also help companies differentiate and demonstrate their brand. So now we're getting back to the business development, the branding. So not just the infomercial, but maybe it's a 30 or 60-second chat between the association CEO and board chair and the CEO of a sponsor company about a topic like what keeps members up at night? What are the main issues around COVID affecting members? Position the company not selling something, but as a thought leader and a source of good information. And to position companies as thought leaders with their content, as roundtable discussion leaders. And I've talked to associations where in the in-person conference a couple of years ago, the sponsors had the opportunity to have topic rooms where they would be open to talk to folks. 10, 15 members would come by. They took those discussion groups with corporate sponsors to the virtual conference. 40 people attended each one. So the companies found much more value in the virtual because attendees attend a whole different way. They can pick and choose, they can bounce around from one room to the other. They don't have to worry about, oh, how am I going to get from one side of the convention center to the other? They click a button and they can move to a different session. So a lot of opportunities at in-person conferences that if we really find out what companies are looking for and work with either our internal folks or our outsource platform providers for virtual to provide that sort of value to target members and position sponsor content at virtual conferences. And therefore, I think the fees for virtual conferences can be as high for sponsors or higher than they were in the in-person because the value is more. So this kind of rush to cut the sponsor fees just devalues what we're trying to sell.
I love that, Bruce. I know that's a hot topic that we hear is pricing sponsorships. And I remember as soon as meetings started getting canceled, I was tuning in on your webinars, and that was one of the first things that you shared. And I think that that's really important because it doesn't just talk about the fact that we can't meet in person, but how are we framing the value where it doesn't matter what the format is. We know how to deliver that ROI.
Right. And I think it's also about delivering that ROI year round. And I know we're very much, again, the paradigm for sponsorships has been, okay, we have a 3-day conference or 2 3-day conferences. Let's see how many sponsorships we can cram into those few days. And that's where it was interesting when I started talking to companies. And it's interesting how many companies say, we market 365 days a year. Even if it's a great 3-day conference with a little bit of badge scanning and spin-off afterwards, that doesn't help us much. And the other risk that we found, especially with the number of conferences that needed to be canceled or repositioned last year, if we put all of our sponsorship eggs in the conference basket, there is a risk. Mm-hmm. So if we can get this, position our associations as like a marketing agency of a whole range of assets or benefits that can be offered to top-level sponsors, webinars, roundtable discussions, focus groups, listserv surveys, and things at the conference, that's when companies begin to say, oh, this is a whole package. This is a year-long solution. This isn't trying to get everything into a 2 or 3-day event. So companies market year-round. We need to come up with ways to leverage association benefits year-round.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, well, we are getting close to our debrief with Ginger, and I'm going to invite a brave soul to ask. There was a few questions in the chat, Bruce, that didn't get answered, but I'm going to ask a brave soul to turn on their mic and share the last question with you, Bruce.
Okay.
Any takers? Oh, all right.
All right. Let me mention one other thing, Alexa, since you mentioned the Partnership Professionals Network, which we set up years ago as an educational opportunity for partnership professionals. The website is partnershipprofessionals.network. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that might be particularly helpful as we all look to virtual conferences in the coming months is a white paper that I co-authored, which is in the knowledge and intelligence section on the PPN website. It's called The New Sponsorship Model for Virtual Events. Free download. And then there's also an article that I co-wrote a few weeks ago on 21 tips for 2021 for successful corporate partnerships.
Yeah, that was a...
And there are other resources on there. So,
all right, Laura got a little shared her question in the chat, so I'm gonna recognize her for that. And she says, I'm a bit worried about gamification for our members, CFOs at colleges and universities. Do you think that they will engage?
Good question. So I don't know specifically about gamification in your audience, Laura, I think it's important for all of us to keep in mind. We have audiences that have certain either legal policy, regulatory restrictions. I worked with a lot of medical associations. I could say, oh, well, bring in your corporate partners and they can help with education. It's like, nope, can't do that. We can't have any pharma companies sponsoring education. So we all need to be aware of what we can and can't do. And in a lot of cases, those companies know what can and can't be done. So I've talked to pharma companies and they say, oh, we already know what we can sponsor and what we can't sponsor. And, we can sponsor a lunch, or we can't sponsor a lunch or education program. So good to know what the limitations are. And I think also as we develop even if it's a one-pager, a sponsorship policy for our association, here's what can be done, here's what can't be done. There are firewalls. There are companies that sometimes their goals deviate outside of those association sponsorship firewalls. But good to have a document, a contract, a policy that dictates what companies can and can't do based on the association and its members and regulatory and policy issues.
All right. Well, thank you, Bruce. I'm going to pass it on to Ginger to kind of break down some of the takeaways that we got today.
Holy buckets, y'all. This is amazing. Bruce, you just gave us a grad level class on this. So great. I am writing, you can see I'm moving all over the place. I'm writing all kinds of notes and all kinds of thoughts. First of all, you are amazing people. Raise your right hand right now. Go ahead, raise your right hand. Repeat after me. You can unmute or off mute. I promise. I'll look for opportunities. I promise, leave the hand up. I promise not to be stymied, I can see your lips, by what has been. And lastly, I promise to look forward to new opportunities. All right, great. That's the mindset that will move us forward. Yeah, that's a corny exercise. We cannot focus on what has been. Bruce laid it out beautifully. Is it work? Yeah, we've chosen to do this work. If this is still your work, I like the word work. I haven't always liked it because it can feel hard in the wrong way. You're all very smart, very engaged people. You wouldn't be here if you didn't care. Build on that. There's so much good in the chat. So I got a lot. I'm not going to go through all of it. I know I'm a fire hose. I'm not everybody's cup of it. Alexis, thanks again for inviting. If I can help you in some way, if you want to have a no strings conversation, I'm very happy to. So get in touch with me. My contact information is in the chat. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So I want to cover a couple highlights that Bruce really, boy, Bruce, you just nailed it. You're so good. So good. First of all, focus on the value. Value, the V word. The best V word is value. ROI is a funny thing. Try not to focus on that because frankly, delivery is an ROI. You do the thing, you've accomplished it. So this is our opportunity to think completely differently. And I know there's so many great people in here thinking of things differently. Be sure and share what's working. I think you already are. And keep sharing more. Call each other. Hey, Ursula, what's working for you? Vanessa, what's working for you? Shelly, this is what's working for me. Laura, what's working for you? As a connector, we don't reach out enough. Let me put that another way. You can reach out more. Now, I realize that the days feel both shorter and longer. And this is our opportunity to crystallize. I like to think about it in ripples. Who is your inner ripple? Who are the people that you can call on day and night, that you know will be there for you, that can give you some answers, some help, some support? There's actually two of these people in this room right now for me. I'm going to give a huge shout out to Ann Neville and Terry Carden. They are on my inner ripple. And who are those people? And then think of the next ripples out. So focus on value. Think of your ripples. Focus on, I love Bruce's equation. I know you can't read it here, but business development plus branding plus experience. Oh, it's so good. If that's the only thing you take, you're winner, chicken dinner, my friends. It's so good. It's so simple. We're trying to make it complex. It's simple. It has to be, some of you have seen this. First of all, it is not this. Please get rid of this thinking. Please don't use that word. It is the current reality. No moldy holdovers. Get rid of what was stale to beginning. Like Bruce said, hey, we've been stale for a while, people. Mother Nature comes along and says, hey, here's your opportunity. Whether we like it or not, it's what we have. Again, you're all really smart, capable people. Keep going. Ask lots of questions. Somewhere along the way, a lot of us, Shelly, you're shaking your head. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yes. Yes. Be the toddler. Be the toddler. Don't you like being asked questions? Laura, do you like being asked questions? Yeah, we love to talk about ourselves. So tap into it. Vicki, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, ask lots of questions. And even when you think you've asked a lot, keep asking. There's a phenomenal book called The Coaching Habit. It's got 7 amazing questions. Austin, would you please put that in the chat, The Coaching Habit? Fantastic book. It's a coaching book. However, this is all about productive conversations, because what you want is you want a why in the road. You want to know if they're a partner or they're not. Get to that fast so you're not wasting anybody's time. Okay, somebody write in the chat, what does this stand for? Or tell me, take yourself off mute and tell me, what is this? T-Ball, what is this?
What's in it for me?
What's in it for me? There you go.
Yes, everybody who said that, what's in it for
mute.
me? But it's not me first, it's them first. Bruce nailed it. This has got to be about them. Sponsorship is not free money. Sponsorship is a true value proposition. It is marketing. That's what I'm talking about. Marketing equals communicating, equals connecting, equals solutions. That's what you're all providing. You're providing a solution. I love, Bruce, that you also focused on year round. Like, look at the whole ecosystem. One sponsorship person I've taken coaching from is Linda Hollander. And if you haven't heard of her, she's another fantastic resource, Sponsor Concierge. She helps businesses like me look at acquiring sponsors also. I highly recommend you take a look at her too, because she says, look, sponsorships right now, make it a long-term agreement. How about you do 3 virtual events and then you're hanging out there for when the live one happens, because all that momentum, just like Bruce said, we can capture all that data like we have never captured it, my friends. Such an opportunity. Let's see, a couple more high points and then I'll tell you the punchline from the joke and I'll let you go. Creativity. When I was in my early 20s, I taught middle school art. You're welcome. It's not for everybody. I loved it because what I realized is that when we are open, when we are willing to be the question asker, when we are willing to find out what is possible, like my middle schoolers, then we can create the most magic art in the world. And I don't believe this is pithy. I believe this is real. Starting with middle schoolers, man, if you can handle what you're doing now, you can handle anything, my friends. Focus on teaching, enlightening, serving, because the sales will come. Yes, they're fewer and far between. I was telling my cohorts before y'all got on, I had 2 emails this morning of 2 clients who backed out. Doesn't feel great. At the same time, you know what? I clearly didn't articulate their value enough. Clearly, that's how I'm taking it. Nobody's bad. There's no judgment. It's like, okay, I can do a better job next time. So you got so much great value today. Make sure you connect with Bruce. Make sure you connect with Map Dynamics. They have phenomenal tools. Bruce obviously has decades of really valuable knowledge. I can't wait, Bruce, for us to have coffee or tea. I don't drink coffee. I don't think I need coffee. Anyway, connect with me if I can help you too. I know, everybody, Ginger, don't drink coffee. Yes, don't worry. I don't like the taste. So stay connecting, my friends. Think of the connector's mindset. When I can help you, great. Keep coming back to these great events that Map Dynamics is hosting, and stay well. I'm going to pass it back to, punchline before I pass it back to Alexis. How do you measure steaks? In inches. They don't have feet.
Very funny.
I know, it's bad. I didn't pick a dad joke though. You're welcome on that one.
All right. Thank you, Ginger. Thank you for the laughs and the energy. And I'm not going to tell you not to drink coffee, but I will caution you because there's some different types of caffeine that you can intake, and you have been my coffee this morning, so thank you. And thank you, Bruce, for the wealth of knowledge that you always share. I always appreciate our conversations. Yes, some air claps or Zoom claps, whatever your preference is. Let's see it. All right. And so as a reminder, we will get the recording to you and the takeaways. I'm going to pull some notes from the chat and share those. I'm going to post our coffee photo to LinkedIn, so keep an eye out for that there. I'm going to post it on my page, Alexis Simino. There aren't many of me. And that is it. So we're hopefully giving you 6 minutes back into your after or your mornings for it's not quite noon yet. And we hope to see you next time. So
Alexis, folks should take those 6 minutes to think about your friendliest sponsor that you can call and just have a conversation. And don't promise anything. You don't even have to ask your CEO if it's okay to call, but pick one or two of your friendliest sponsors and call them and start a conversation and see how it goes.
Thank you, Bruce. Bye, everyone.
Thank
Bye,
you, guys.
everybody. Thank you for coming.